You are not a failure. You just need to learn to manage your expectations. Let's talk. Hi there, Shannon here with Genesis Balance. If you're new to my channel, I want to say welcome. And if you've been here before, I want to say welcome back and thank you so much for your support. If you haven't done so already, please go ahead and click the subscribe button and make sure you hit that bell for notifications, because it's my goal to keep providing you with videos that are going to help you live your best life. So, you are not a failure. You just need to learn to manage your expectations. What exactly does that mean? If you've ever found yourself describing yourself as type A, an overachiever, or a perfectionist, then you probably fall into this category. So at some point in time, you've probably felt like a failure, but what was actually going on was that because of those overachiever characteristics, you set the bar for yourself really, really, really high. And what can sometimes happen when we set goals that are very lofty and a bit grandiose is that when we don't achieve those goals, we can feel like we failed ourselves. We can feel like we failed ourselves, our family, our friends, the people at work. But I don't think that failure would be the right word to describe it. If anything, you failed at setting a SMART goal. So a few videos ago, I talked about SMART goals and the fact that it's an acronym for a goal setting process. So SMART stands for specific, measurable, achievable, relevant, and time bound. So the thing that a lot of overachievers or perfectionists tend to miss in the SMART goals process is the achievable part. Your goals have to be achievable to begin with. I don't think that you can really fail at something that it was impossible to reach in the first place. So if you find yourself feeling down on yourself, feeling like you're failing at everything, stop for a minute and take a look at the goals you're setting for yourself and check in to see if you were setting achievable goals to begin with. Because if not, you didn't really fail to meet the goal. You just kind of set yourself up with an impossible goal. So the thing that we have to remember is that we are the absolute hardest on ourselves, and we tend to set unrealistic goals for ourselves. We really set the bar a bit too high, a bit higher than we probably would set for other people. And that's where using SMART goals can really help you out. That's where the SMART goals comes in, because you're making sure you're being super specific. You're making sure you have a way to measure what you're doing so you know how well you're moving toward your goal, how close you are to your goal. You're making sure that your goal is achievable, that is something that can actually be done. You're making sure it's relevant. Is it even relevant to how you feel in life, to what you want overall for life? And you're making sure that you're setting a time limit. It's time bound. So the other part where we need to manage our expectations is making sure our goals are still relevant. So if I set myself up for a goal and I pick something as a goal that doesn't really feel relevant to me, I'm not really passionate about it, it's not going to lead to me achieving some bigger goal down the line, then I may very well not find enough motivation to be able to achieve that goal. And then, of course, we go back to feeling down on ourselves, feeling like a failure, feeling like we have completely lost out on meeting this goal. But again, if it wasn't relevant to me in the first place, then I really didn't have any business pushing forward toward that goal to begin with. So managing your expectations, understanding that if I don't feel like this goal is really relevant to the big picture for me, I am probably not going to be able to gather up enough motivation to keep pushing forward to reach that goal. So again, it's not so much that you failed at the goal, It's just that the goal didn't mean enough to you for you to keep working at it. So another way to kind of check in with yourself is to think about it this way. If you were talking to a friend and they were telling you that they set some really huge, lofty goal, what would you tell them? And this is a technique that I use all the time in session with clients, especially when I'm trying to help them learn to change their train of thought, change the way they think and process their thoughts, change the way that they look at situations. So if you wouldn't necessarily expect your friend to be able to do it, and this is of course assuming that you feel like your friend is kind of on the same level as you, cognitively, mentally, things of that nature. If you're looking at someone that kind of measures up to you in your mind and you wouldn't really expect them to be able to achieve that goal, then why are you pressuring yourself to be able to meet that goal? So if you wouldn't put it on someone else, you probably shouldn't be putting it on yourself. And an example of this is, for instance, I am in the process of relearning Spanish for like the umpteenth time because I've taken Spanish. I took Spanish in high school. I took Spanish in college, but I know very little Spanish. So I'm in the process of using an app to try to, hone in on my Spanish speaking skills. And I've been at it for about 2 or 3 weeks now. And I just remember thinking to myself, in one particular lesson, I just kept getting answers wrong. It was like one after another after another. I was getting these answers wrong. And I was really starting to feel very discouraged and kind of down on myself about it. And I had to kind of check in on myself and remind myself that Spanish is not my first language. And I had only been working at it for about 2 weeks. So even though I wasn't necessarily verbalizing this goal or specifically thinking about this goal, I clearly had it in my mind that I should be fluent in Spanish by the end of 1 week of using this app. And that is an example of one of those unachievable, unrealistic, unattainable goals that we sometimes put on ourselves that can make us feel like a failure on the other side. And it's not even something that we're necessarily conscious that we're doing. And that's why it's so important to make sure you're checking in with yourself when you do feel like you failed at something. Was this, one, even one of my goals? And two, was it achievable in the first place? Was it something that I could have attained if I really worked at it? Because I doubt that the issue is that you're lazy. It's probably more along the lines of your goal was too lofty to begin with. So even though I didn't necessarily set out to become fluent in Spanish in 2 weeks, when I started getting those answers wrong again and again and again, and I started feeling like I was failing at this task, I realized I must be putting some type of pressure on myself to be doing better than I probably should be doing at this point in the game. After only 2 weeks of using a generic app, there's no way that I should be getting every single answer right, because that would probably mean that I already spoke the language. I was already fluent in the language if I was able to do that. So obviously something in me was setting this unrealistic goal. And again, if you are typically an overachiever and typically a perfectionist, this is something that you're going to see time and time again in your life. This is something that you're going to constantly deal with. So whenever you start to feel like, man, I am really messing up, I'm failing at something, I'm failing at this, I want you to stop and think about what it is about this situation that's making you feel like a failure, and really check in to see what is the goal, and is that even a realistic goal? Was that goal achievable? So the thing about it is that you can still be successful even if you scale back your goal. especially if you fall into that overachiever category. You had already set the bar so high that if you come down 2 or 3 notches, you're still probably looking at a goal that is above average. So just because you may need to rethink some things and you may need to scale back on what it is that you were working toward, or maybe it's more of a matter of you just need to break your goal up into steps. Even if you have to take little bite sizes out of your goal to reach that big goal at the end, that doesn't mean that you're suddenly not successful. You will still be successful. You may just need to adjust your plan and how you reach that goal. And that's something that I actually discussed in another video. Just because your plan has to change doesn't mean your goal needs to change. So sometimes it's not that we're failing, it's just that we need to adjust our means and our method of how we're going to reach our goal. So if that means scaling back your goal a little bit, you can still be successful at that. If that means breaking your goal up into more manageable, more achievable steps, you can still be successful at that. And then the reason why this is so very important is because making unattainable goals sets you up for failure and it sets you up for depression, because we have the tendency to believe everything we think. And if we are thinking negative thoughts about ourselves, then that can lead to feeling really down, sad, depressed, feeling like a failure, feeling guilty as though you're letting everyone down. Those are all symptoms of depression. And if we continuously tell ourselves that we're a failure, then we start to believe it, and that can lead to us feeling depressed. If we continuously tell ourselves that we're a failure, then that may hold us back from actually working toward attainable goals, to goals that you could actually achieve. It could also lead to anxiety. So now whenever I attempt to move toward this goal, I get anxious that I'm going to fail again. I have a fear of failure now because I have been constantly telling myself that I am going to fail, that I am a failure, that if I try it again, I'm just going to fail again. So these thoughts can lead to both depression and anxiety. That's why it is so super important that we are making achievable goals. And the opposite is also true. When we're making realistic, achievable goals for ourselves and we reach those goals and we can put a little check in our check box and we can check that off and scratch that off our to-do list, then that makes us feel really good about ourselves. It makes us feel as though we are being successful, we are accomplishing something. So for instance, it doesn't have to be some grand big plan. It can be just a basic to-do list. If I put 50 things on my task list for that day, there's no way I'm going to be able to achieve all of that. And if I can only cross off 2 or 3 items and I see that I still have all this stuff listed that I needed to get done that day, then yeah, I'm going to feel like a failure. But if, let's say, I only put 3 or 4 things on my list, and maybe 1 or 2 of those things are things that I absolutely know that I am either going to have to do because that's just what it is, I have to get it done, or things that are kind of softballs that I can get done pretty easily, then even if I don't get to the bigger task, I can still check off those things off my to-do list, and that keeps me motivated for the next day. That's going to keep me motivated to keep moving toward the bigger goals that I have, even with something as simple as, okay, today I am going to make up my bed and I am going to do the dishes and I'm going to do a load of laundry. And if I'm able to get all 3 of those things checked off my to-do list, I feel accomplished. And those are really attainable, achievable goals to set for yourself. So even if you have other goals like at work or at school or with family, if I can at least check off these 3 softball goals for myself, I still feel positive at the end of the day. I still feel like I've achieved something because I have. You absolutely have. So just make sure that you're not being too hard on yourself. If it's something that you wouldn't necessarily tell your best friend, oh yeah, you're a failure because you didn't achieve this big, huge, lofty goal, don't tell it to yourself. Make sure the goals that you're setting are achievable and attainable and relevant to you and what it is that you want out of life. And make sure that you keep a check on the negative self-talk. If I'm starting to feel like a failure and I'm starting to feel down on myself, then that probably means I need to check in with what my goal was to begin with. So I hope that this video kind of sheds some light on what it actually means to be a failure versus what it means to set overreaching goals, and kind of gives you the encouragement you need to take a beat and actually sit down and think about whether or not your goals are achievable. If you like this video, please, by all means, let me know that by giving me a thumbs up. And if you haven't done so already, go ahead and click that subscribe button and make sure you click that bell for notifications, because I don't want you to miss 1 minute of these videos that are designed to help you live your best life.